To talk about and then demonstrate. I'm like anybody else. I like the exciting things. You know, I'd much rather do decision making or backline play or attacking from deep. But in the end, all that's impossible if you don't get the little things right. And given that, although I worked for the England Rugby Union for 4 or 5 years, my background is predominantly rugby league, and detail is a massive part of rugby league coaching. And one of the things that we always hammer home to the players is grip, because that's where everything starts. So this won't be as exciting maybe as some of the topics I just mentioned, but it's no less important. In fact, without it you can't do those things. So I'm just briefly going to talk about why grip is important, where it fits in, and then we'll go outside, and the 20 minutes I'll demonstrate exercises that you can do with players at every session, and it's my experience that you use your warm-up to practice the core skills. And the great thing about grip is you can encourage players. It's something you can do on their own. They don't need it's one of the few things in rugby you don't need someone else there to do it with. So lots of practices that you'd never do them all together in the way we'd do them outside, but you know, if you use them over and over again at different times, you'll get a lot of benefit from them. Obviously, the thing about grip is little hands and big balls don't always, if you pardon the expression, work, but you need to work that out for yourselves. You know, don't be afraid to use footballs or smaller rugby balls to get that grip, because if they've got secure grip, they can do most things in rugby. I knew that one. Yeah. So the hard part in rugby is teaching people what they think they already know and you expect them to know. Every player thinks they can catch and pass. Every player thinks they can run with the ball in hands. Every player thinks they've got terrific control. Nobody wants to work on that. They've got that. You only have to watch them. If you watch kids go out and throw a ball about, most of them can't do it. And they get themselves contorted in all sorts of different ways because they can't hold the ball and secure the ball properly. A guy I used to work with called David Howes, who was the managing director at Leeds Rhinos, he wasn't the most educated man, but he used to think he could speak Latin, and every time you say something to him, you say non presumo, which he thought was Latin for never presume. And I think that's something as a coach you should never do. No matter who you work with, never presume that they can do it, and never presume they can do it over and over again. You've always got to work on it. I'm going to have to do this by hand now. So rugby, a game of going forwards and backwards played predominantly sideways. In life we always come across problems. More often than not, we've got a chance to have a look at it, work out how we can get around it or go through it, discuss it with somebody, ask for advice, phone a friend, look at how we can do it. If we can't get past it, we'll go around it and carry on if possible. Rugby doesn't allow us that. More often than not, when we've got a problem in front of us, the fact that there's a stand and a perimeter fence stops us going round it. A defensive line in front of us makes it look as though we can't go through it. To go through a line, you need to have skill. And you need to have the skill to manipulate the ball in collision and to be able to either secure it or to pass it safely from one person to another. I think that's fair to say. Yeah. So, as coaches, what are we aiming for with our young players? Before I tell you what I'm aiming, can anybody tell you, if you get a group of young players, I think you all work with the under-15s, is that right, the Jewish Shield boys? When you get your squads together at the start, what is it you're looking for? If you could think of a phrase that you were, or just a sentence that told me what you were looking for as coaches with your players. Anybody?
To get the basics right, that's what I look for.
Yep, that's it. That's perfect. Anybody else? Anything else you'd?
High skill level.
Yep.
Being able to pass off both hands.
To do the simple things. Well, I was very fortunate to listen to Pep Guardiola give a talk in London, and he talked about the Barcelona way. And like most coaches, I went with a big thick pad ready for the, for the real inside info on what made such a fabulous team tick. And everything they did was based on simple things. Passes over 2 metres and no more. And it was all about doing the simple things well. And Steve McLaren, the failed England coach at football, who I think has gone back into Dutch football now, was there, and he was talking about Paul Scholes, and his nickname at Manchester United was windscreen wiper, because that's all he ever, his head never stopped moving. And all he did was look around, he knew where everybody was, he had the pitch mapped out, and that's all he'd play short passes to people in simple positions. And you could see there were a lot of disappointed faces in the Xavi and Iniesta, but they always did the simple things well. Consistently well was the word he kept using, consistently well, consistently well. In 1992, I went to watch the Kangaroos, the Australian Rugby League team, who were known as the Invincibles at the time. They were over on tour playing Great Britain. And they did an open session at Castleford Rugby League Club. And they came in the thousands. There were about 5,000 people there, bigger than I think they'd had the previous Sunday for a game. And they all came for the same thing. What is it they do that makes them so fantastic? And they did a very simple square drill to set off, where the ball just moved around the square, and it got faster and faster, and the square got smaller, then it got bigger, and then they stopped, and then they went on to some team play. And a bloke sat next to me turned to his mate and he said, "What do you think of that?" His mate said, "Oh, bloody rubbish." He said, "That's what I thought." I said, "We do that." And they couldn't understand that what makes them so good was that they did the same things as his team, but they did it 1,000 times better, but they did it consistently well over and over again. And the message is always there. It's getting your players to do the simple things well over and over again that makes them different. Now, what do you think Guardiola's phrase was for his team? You know, somebody just said to get the basic skills right, high skill level. Disciplined self-indulgence was what he said. So they could play what they needed to play at all times because they had the basic tools in their armoury. And he showed some clips. At first glance it looked like a fantastic goal, but nobody ran more than 3 steps, nobody passed the ball over 5 metres, and they scored a goal. It took 15 seconds. But his idea of a great team was a team that showed disciplined self-indulgence. They could do what they wanted to do as long as they did it within the framework of the core skill, that they all did the skills perfectly well. Has anybody read the book Sacred Hoops by Phil Jackson, the LA Lakers? Pardon?
The Bulls, wasn't it?
Like the Bulls, we went to the LA Lakers then, yeah, that was his. In American terminology, he's the most winningest coach in basketball history, which I think means his win-loss ratio is better than everybody else's. And one of his biggest moans was that on their version of Match of the Day, that they always show the fantastic slam dunk as the skill of the day, where in his team, the pass that could split a defence, the simple bounce pass that got through to set up a basket was the great play. And his success is built around making all the greats, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, all fantastic individuals, making them a great team. And it was based on the same, he talks about the same sort of thing that Guardiola talks about making sure that everybody, all highly skilled, but all playing as a disciplined unit. But the discipline comes from the ability to manipulate the ball and make the ball do what you want without overexerting yourself. So, if we take that as a point, our aim should be doing the basic things exceptionally well in preference to doing the exceptional things basically well. Which I think, when you think about it, makes common sense. There's a famous saying by Booker T. Washington that excellence is the ability to do the common thing in an uncommon way. Well, in our sport, the ability to hold the ball and pass the ball is a common thing, but how many people can do it perfectly over and over again? The games I watch on a weekend, I'd say not. I mean, to be honest, if If you paid to watch a juggler at the local theatre and he dropped 6 balls out of 10, you'd ask for your money back and leave. But how many times do we accept it in a game, in professional games, where the skill level's just not up to scratch, where passes go behind or passes are dropped, where people just can't execute the basic thing. They can do it once, twice, but they can't always do it the third time, that consistently well. And it all comes from that ability to manipulate the ball. So it's function, not force. Again, going back to watching kids warm up, how many times do you see boys trying to throw 10, 15 metre passes when they're outside? It's the first thing they do. They'll try and whistle a bit. If they don't kick it to somebody, they'll whistle it as far as they can. It's all about trying to do things as long and as hard as possible. And it's force that comes into play. It's not function. They haven't got the competence to do the skill properly. And that all comes from that ability to hold the ball. If you can hold it properly, you can transfer it properly. So in our training, we need to get function into play before force. So all our drills need to be, and I mean this with adults in mind as well, because my experiences in North Wales recently show that most of the adults up there struggle with things over a distance. So if that's the case, shorten things up. Most passes in a game are no more than from me to the front row. That's the length of pass that most people make in a game. There are very few long passes. It's not something that goes over and over again. So you've got to, the person's ability to manipulate the ball over a small distance is the key thing. Everything works away from there. So we've got to get them the physical competence to do the technical stuff, and then the technical competence to do the tactical stuff. But it's got to be in that order. So we have to start at the beginning. It's not going to have a philosophy of, I want my team to run the ball from deep and we always keep the ball in play, if they can't catch the bloody thing or they can't pass it properly, because all that falls apart. So with that expectation without preparation, you know, we do the same thing in training over and over again, expect people to get better. But if we want or expect players to get better, we need to prepare them better. So sometimes that means taking a step back. Some of our sessions don't need to be as exciting as, you know, as we might think they should be. We don't need to be one of those coaches who sees a new drill and uses it because they like it, but it doesn't really fit in with what you're doing. I've been guilty of it myself. Especially as a younger coach, if I saw something new, I couldn't wait to get into training to try it, as opposed to thinking, does that fit in with what we've got? And quality underpins success. One of the things that's a real bugbear for me is acceptance of mistakes. You set the benchmark at a certain level and you expect them to get there, and you never waver from that. You can lift the level bit by bit, but you have to expect quality all the time. Everything you do, even in the grip things, it's got to be quality. Again, I've done this thing a million times and then gone outside and watched people do it, and to move on to the next thing, they just get through it. It's desperately important. And success is the aggregate of small margins. It's bit by bit. They'll get better slowly but surely. Get the process right and the outcome usually takes care of itself. And quality means we've got to have zero tolerance on poor technique. If you accept second best, you'll get second best. I know I'm telling you what you already know, but from a lot of what I've seen, we tend to accept it just so we can move on quickly. If you can only get from A to B, but you can get from A to B well, that's good, rather than getting from A to J and looking ropey on the way. So the building blocks to success, particularly offensive success, which we're talking about, is the skills pyramid. That's the top of it, the nice bits, the decision making, playing from depth, whether it's flat, deep, narrow, wide, running lines, prominent citizen, which is what we call the ball carrier who leads it forward, and the support players, and then the domino skills, the things that fall into place on the back of it, timing, anticipation, vision. They're terrific skills, but they're only at the top because without the base, they're nothing. If you can't grip the ball, if you can't carry it, if you can't catch it, you can't pass it, the top bit doesn't come into play. So as unexciting as it is, you've got to start at the bottom and work up. If you can get those 4 bits right, the rest of it, pardon me, usually takes care of itself. But what you'll usually find is that the size of that little one at the top is usually the time spent on the bit at the bottom. You might, if you do it at all, pay passing glance to the core skills and then let's get straight onto the 3v2. Let's have a game and do this, that, and you haven't got the skills. You can't get to disciplined self-indulgence because they haven't got the tools to do it. So it's got to go in that order, has to. And as I said, the core skills, and everybody pays lip service to core skill. We need to get, everybody needs to get a basic skill level. You can spend your warm up on it. It doesn't have to take over the rest of your session. Once you've worked on it a little bit, if you spend time in the warm up, just going over and over, bit of grip, bit of catch, but making sure that it's quality and there's no, there's no acceptance of mistakes, it'll improve the rest of your session, but you don't have to spend an inordinate amount of time on it. So, going back to that function, not force, grip, we'll look at 2 hands because the ability to carry the ball properly in 2 hands at speed is important. To carry it securely into collision is important. The ability to hold it in 1 hand is desperately important. How many times you see people go into tackle and they've got support that shouts for the ball, they hold the ball out and it starts to roll down their arm and it's going whether the pass is on or not. More times than we'd like to see. But if you've got the ability to hold it in a good grip, show it, it's on, it's not on, bring it back in, that's a fantastic skill, whether you're 6 or 66. So ball manipulation becomes important. You begin by doing it standing still, and there's tons of practices you can do on it to keep it different and a little more interesting than normal. And then do it on the move. Pin drills, those 2 lines facing each other. Old school, but fantastic for things like this where you can just get them, keeps them moving. You practice all the different little manipulations you do. And you every session, and it says at the last one, you don't compromise, you don't accept second best, and you make sure you always put it in. Because as Booker T said, excellence is the ability to do the common thing in an uncommon way, and in our game, in both codes, basic skill is often pushed to one side so we can go on to the more interesting. But if you can catch, pass, carry, hold the ball and do it over and over again, you'll lead to disciplined self-indulgence, where they can play the game they want to play as and when they see it because they've got the basic skills to consistently do it well. So before we go outside, that's my quick party political broadcast on core skill. Is anything you want to ask before, or anything you want to comment on? This is only my opinion, bear in mind, it's not, there's no gospel involved here, it's just based on my experience over time. If you can't get this bit right, the next bit becomes ever more difficult.
Good. We're with you.
Time is the problem.
Well, yes and no. If you can either do it as you warm up or you warm down, because I presume you've got to do one with your, or you should do one with your boys. But you can do it on the move. You can do it as part of your physical warm up. You can do it when they're finished. Just because a lot of the things are very simple, and 10 minutes is enough every session. If you put a time to do one session on basic skills, on a core skill, and then use your warm up, warm down, whichever bit of it you want for the rest of your sessions, just to keep going over it. I know you haven't got the luxury of lots of time, but make a little bit of time, and then no one can ever accuse you of not trying to give them the best. Because every senior coach that I've ever worked with moans that the players aren't skillful enough when they come through the system. You know, you get it all the time, and they always give the car scenario, don't you? If I went into a garage for a car, I expect it to have 4 wheels and a steering wheel, but these players should come up and be able to catch and pass, but they can't. Well, they can't throw that at you if you've put that little bit of time aside. And even with senior players, you know, I've been very lucky to work at international level in both codes, and you know, senior players need it as well. It's not like riding a bike where once you've got it you don't forget. You've got to keep working at it all the time. Anything else? No?
No, I'm with you. I took 12s at district and 80% couldn't pass when they came for the trial.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
I mean, it's back to that. Yeah. Nobody wants to be shown something that they think they can already do. That's the hard bit of the pass and catch. But if you can demonstrate to them that they can't do it, and can't do it consistently well.
How much does the technique vary between league and union?
The biggest difference between rugby league and rugby union is attention to detail. Now it's a simpler game in that there's no set piece to worry about. You know, there's no line out scrum. Well, there is a scrum, but it's just a lean-to. But the biggest difference in is that detail. It's much more detailed, the sessions. You know, there's a lot more time spent on the basic skills. You know, and often I think because rugby union coaches have a lot to get through, they like to get from one thing to another. You know, I spent 2 years at Leicester Tigers when I first went to rugby union. It was for my experience. So I worked with the first team as skills coach, and it was when they had, well, it was 2002-03 when England won the World Cup. So the whole team was international thing. But bugger me, would they didn't want to do any basic stuff. Just wanted to get straight onto a catch and drive and you know, let's put the ball into touch and we'll more. All the, you know, it was regimented to such a degree that, you know, and it eventually caught them out because the game opened up. You know, the Premiership at the time was opening up, and there was a lot more attacking play, and the one-dimensional way that Leicester played caught them up, and in the end it cost Dean Richards his job. But there is a place for it. You know, as much as I know, you know, I've been involved with rugby union long enough to know that you can't dismiss, you know, the set piece because it's the core of what you do, and the contact area is, you know, key to everything. But you've still got to be able to. It's all right winning every line out, you know, winning every scrum, taking every ball at the breakdown. If you can't do anything with it when you get it, you keep dropping it or throwing it behind. Or
I know rugby unions are changing a bit now, Damian, but I think growing up with the kids today, like rugby league kids were taught in it, just they're no end pass, you know, just the rugby union boys seem to spiral the ball as they were growing up, to be honest.
Well, yeah, but I think that seems to be something that's developed. But like I said, and I've watched, before I threw that out, I've watched quite a few games to make sure, and I kid you not, the passes, I bet 80% of passes, 90%, are no further from this wall to the front row. Now, if you can't throw a ball there without having to whistle it, then there's something wrong. And the thing about a spin pass, and I aren't decrying it because I think it's a terrific skill to have off both hands. You watch anybody who does it, the ball drops down here, and then it gets swung back, and then there's a twist of the court. Well, all that takes time. And when you're playing rugby where you're just looking for a short pass or a pass to a thing, you haven't always got the luxury of that time. And the other thing about dropping your hands is that the ball becomes less secure because it's away from the core of your body. There are reasons why there's definitely a place for a spin pass, and there's a place for that push pass, if you want to call it that. I mean, I've never really thought about it. And, you know, I find it difficult to believe that people have to spin it as hard as they can. It's that force above function. You know, they've got to whistle it to somebody, and you know, if you can catch a ball like that all the time, you've got great hands, because it's a difficult thing to catch a ball going at that speed. You know,
you just see our kids, we just brought up with our party, you know.
Yeah.
and the rugby league is put up with the other part, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know it's changing now, they're bringing more rugby parts into the game, but I think our kids have brought up with it so long. Because first thing you do, like you say, they get it.
But it's, I went to the under-16s at North Wales, and I don't mean this to belittle what I saw, but all the boys ran into this fantastic new facility in Colwyn Bay Park areas, and they've all got a ball, and some of the kids, you know, they're all throwing the long pass, but some of them were I thought they were having seizures, you know, they were getting themselves into unbelievable positions to get, and they couldn't literally pass a ball, but they couldn't pass it from here to here. But they're all trying to do these unbelievable spin passes because they want to do it over distance. They want to be a 9 to 10 or a 10 to 13. So yeah, I honestly believe that just to practice kids just throwing a short pass, not taking away the spin pass, because I think the spin pass is, like I said, is a terrific weapon in your armoury, but used at the right time. When you're passing over distance, there's nothing better. But the grip leads on to the pass. You know, if you grip it properly when you catch and you get the grip, and the next thing, it's always in your hands for the pass. That takes on to another topic. But so if we go outside now, like I said, it's not exciting, but I'll show you just plenty of practices you can do to practice the grip, both one-handed and two-handed, and you know, things that you can use over and over again. And if you're interested in it and you want to look for it, have a look at handball or look at rugby league because handball is a terrific thing for getting rugby practices from as great drills, particularly grip drills, because you know, I know they've got little footballs though, but they've got some fantastic practices. Okay, go outside.